Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Freeman Files here on the J-Free 906 podcast channel. Thank you for joining us tonight. We got a full house. Mike and Seth and I were just flabbergasted to have special guest Erik Bard and Pete Kelsey. How you guys doing? Erik, you're still muted.
I'm doing great.
I think you just answered the question for me. How am I doing? I'm muted.
Oh, man. Well, I really appreciate you guys joining us tonight. As you know, folks, we really appreciate all of you joining us here as well. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, episode number 3 of season 6. I believe this one was called Smoke It Out, which was a term that was given by Thomas Winterton during the episode. He said that, which is appropriate for the way things went on the show, Smoke It Out. So we're going to be talking about that tonight. We appreciate all of you again. And if you haven't already, we'd like to ask, or I'd like to ask, if you would consider subscribing to the channel. And if you like the content of the show we do for you here tonight, give us a thumbs up. We appreciate that. And if you'd like to help support the show, there's many ways you can do that. There's all kinds of it. Linda will probably pop a few of those up as we go along here tonight. But again, thank you very much for joining us. This is going to be a fun one. We're going to do our best to get through this episode. And I'm glad, as an insider myself, and I love the insider program, the Skinwalker Ranch Insider Program. It's fantastic. I've been a member since the very beginning. And the opportunity that we have to share in our little way in the investigation that is going on Skinwalker Ranch is just phenomenal. We really appreciate that. So I know a lot of the insiders are here with us tonight. You can find that, if you'd like, at skinwalker-ranch.com. You can find it there. Go out. It is a paid program, but I think they got a promo going right now that if you put in Dragon, not him, but if you put his name in there, Dragon, you get a free trial, I think it is, or something like that. I forget the exact extent of that, but so give it a check. I think you'll find it's a great community and it's a lot of fun helping Erik out with his investigations out there, and all that's going on. All right. Free for a month. Oh, there you go. So thank you, Linda. Appreciate that. So I hope you guys are ready for this because I know that for the most part, many cast members of these shows don't actually watch the show. Yes. Probably just don't have time. So it's interesting. So we're going to go through all of that as we go on tonight. I do have my pictures that people or have gotten used to, whether they like it or not. I don't know. But so let's jump into it, shall we? Oops. There we go. All right. The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch, as I said, episode number 3 of season 6, Smoke It Out. And this one starts off with going right to the Mesa and the Mesa drill site. I was pretty surprised to find out how it was actually right on the edge of this dome that has now been seen with different technology, this dome that's over the triangle area, and it just encompasses the drill site. And as we've seen, there's been issues with the transmitter that they put in the drill head as it goes up into the Mesa, and then getting it to sync sometimes with the handheld, the beacon, I guess they call it, the beacon, and then the receiver of the beacon. Last week we had that issue, and they actually drove outside of the bubble area, which would be just here to the west of this section here where the drill site is, and it synced up fine. I think it was it the first time? Do you guys know?
That it synced up immediately, and to me that was a fantastic validation of the interference zone. I mean, you've been able to repeat where that interference hits within that 1,000 foot range, 2,000 feet wide, to get that real-time test. Mm-hmm. It's interfered with when you're inside the bubble. They get just outside the bubble, syncs up immediately, comes back, has a little bit of interference, but not enough to knock it out. That was phenomenal.
Yep. Is that you guys find that a lot with the equipment I mean, this is the first time I think that I can recall where we have said, or somebody has said, I think Travis is like, hey, let's take it outside of this zone of interference and see what happens. And has that happened with other, have you done it with others?
Well, that choice or that idea of taking the beacon and the receiver outside, I think it occurred to all of us at the same time, and this, and that is informed by, of course, what we've seen in some of our previous work in Pete's, especially the terrestrial laser scanner work, where we think there might be some kind of physical boundary. You show us a boundary and we're going to want to cross it, right?
Uh-huh.
So, you get something unusual happening. It makes sense to look at what happens as you go through that transition, go completely outside, go through the transition, go to the inside. So I completely agree. This was night and day. It was like flipping a switch. And, seeing that in very close proximity, those devices couldn't communicate with each other there at the drill site, and then taking it out to the west of Homestead 2, and then seeing what happens as you go through that sort of transition zone. Boy, that's good science.
It is. And that's and like Mike said, that's validation of the fact that there is an end to this zone of interference, the dome or whatever. You get outside of that and things just seem to work.
And we've seen that happen with people, right? Somebody
Really?
starts feeling squirrely, get them off the property. Hey,
Oh,
I'm starting to feel better.
Yep. Yeah, I have seen that. We have seen that a little bit on the show. We know that even that time when you guys were drilling, I'm going to step back. I think this was last season. You were drilling at the triangle, was it, Mike? They're drilling at the triangle, and then you tasted that metallic taste in your mouth, and felt the electricity that was actually on the drill rod itself. And and you had to leave, and I think someone else had to get away from the area and off the ranch there for a little bit. Definitely something that affects you there. I had that other picture up real quick. This was the one, and folks, everybody's seen this before, but I thought for anybody that might be new to the channel here, I would talk about this really quick. They have completed borehole number 1, has been put in, and it went all the way through, and it finally, after many failed attempts, made its way all the way through the Mesa. And then now they're in the process of, as of last night's episode, trying to pull the reamer down through there and widen this hole a little bit. The idea is, as these little blue circles are showing here, that they will put sensors inside of here. Not really sure all, maybe Erik and Pete can help us with that, but I'm not really sure what all types of sensors may go in there, but something in there to try to get a better understanding or get some data on this anomaly that they believe is inside the Mesa. And so if they get a borehole on both sides, then they can actually, look in between them and see what's there. Did I explain that okay? Was that?
It's a good explanation. There are some kinds of instruments that simply witness what's going on, at their position in one of those holes.
Mhm.
If you have a stabilized hole in that Mesa near what is rightfully called an anomaly inside of the Mesa, you can just data log. You can watch what happens, sort of understand what sorts of natural variations we see, and see if there are in fact any responses in the instruments when we're doing other things. But there's another mode, and that is if you have 2 of these pathways, you can use instruments that sort of speak to each other. You get what we might call a tomographic, or a kind of like a CAT scan, a view to the side. That's the ambition.
Wow. That's great. I can't wait. I hope that as we've seen so far, which one of the guys is giving us feedback on the audio? Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I hear it too.
Anybody that's not on headphones would be, Erik. If you could turn your output volume down just a smidge, it might be picking up and coming back through the microphone. See if that'll work for us. Hopefully it'll work. So that's a really interesting thing to put that, and again, I love the way on last week's Behind the Gates with Maddie Blake that was out there, and that same question came up right at the beginning. This is not last night's, but last week's. when he asked Brandon about, just digging it up. And then he said, and then Brandon said something about, yeah, people are always telling us to blow the thing up. And obviously we've talked about that before. That's not a viable solution to destroy the very thing that you're trying to discover and test and get data on. What would the blue orb have to consist of in order to avoid all the cameras, but still be seen with the naked eye? Jumping ahead of us, Jude, but that's okay. So you're talking about the one that when the rocket went up. We'll get to that, and we'll answer your question, Jude. I promise.
That's a good question.
Yeah, very good question. We'll get to that. I promise when we get to that section here. I did want to show this picture, and I know I did not, when I had this in my stash of pictures, I did not know that Erik was going to be here. It's not one of the faces of Erik, but it's the hat, and I love this hat. It's very similar to mine. I wear this when I'm out and I'm doing my outside work, so I love the hat. Absolutely. So
I
have a green
like
one.
Pete.
They're fantastic.
I love them. Yeah, that's a great hat. I love
Color
it.
coordinated. I look like Pete when I go hiking or fishing, go out in the sun. I got to cover my face. I'm wrapped up.
Yeah.
All my arms are covered. I don't let a single ray of sun hit my skin. So anytime I see Pete repping all the wrap and the wide brim hat, I clap. So I'm like, yeah, I know.
About time.
It's a lot of fun seeing what people's attention is drawn to.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. Well, I've had the faces of Erik Bard. The camera loves to catch you. When you're making your. I guess it was put to me as your befuddled face.
Yeah. So look. Let me tell you about the hat. It's kind of sentimental, actually. We were doing some filming one year. It's been a while, and Bryant saw that I was getting baked right on the top of my head. So he goes out and he buys this hat and he brings it to me, and it's a little bit small, but by golly, I'm wearing it because he cared enough to go do that. So that's sort of the backstory behind that hat. I guess I look a little silly in it, but it does keep the sun off.
No, not at all. I mean,
That's all that matters.
Yeah, I wear this one all the time when I'm outside, and I don't care what I look like. It's helping to keep my ears from burning and the back of my neck from burning and everything else. So I wear it.
As the years go on, we kind of need that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
we can use all the help we can get.
It beats the hell out of melanoma. Take it
Oh
from me.
yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So I have promised myself, if we do any more of this, I'm not cutting my hair so short.
There you go. Well, I remember COVID years. I think it was I don't know that one. You let it grow along that one.
I just was it's a combination of laziness and a desire not to be in public places unnecessarily. So that's great.
Yep. So I had the next picture here. This was the dome that was put together. Now I don't know if this particular Erik, you had taken Pete's data and put together one that looked more like a snow globe. And then I think Prometheus put this one together to make it look cloudy or whatever. But the idea is the same, and it gives you the representation of this dome that, as we've heard you mentioned before, it has changed in its your thinking of it as we go along. It was originally a cone. Then as you got more data, it became more of a dome. And now you have more of a bubble effect because you're looking at the fact that it actually extended 300 some meters underground as well as, 610 meters above ground. So it has kind of manifested into this. But I think that I think you're spot on with it. So, and then the Mesa drill site being contained within it. So now I'm assuming that some of this from the center point of the triangle, 200 feet or 2,000 feet to the north goes beyond what the ranch owns, I think, or the part of the ranch property. Is that fair to say?
Certainly. Certainly, the property boundaries are so strange shaped, but yeah.
So this is amazing to me. This right here, I think to have reached this point in all the work that you guys have done, all the instrumentation you've thrown at this, and the experiments that you've done, getting to this point here, I think, is phenomenal. To find out that there is in fact some sort of a bubble effect and things going on inside that.
Yeah, I think this is probably one of the few things I've seen where you've gotten to a point where that just the description of that range of that zone has got me wanting to go back and rewatch all of the seasons and all of the episodes, because I know that there are times when things happen within that boundary that without that description, you might not have picked up on it. And it fits that model. It fits the model of the bubble. We talked last week about when you guys were throwing bottles out of the helicopter with the streamers, and it seemed like the bottles would never go down through the triangle and hit the triangle. It always almost seemed like it bounced off of something and went away from that area, or the medicine balls, or even the big bulldozer that came in and ate batteries. They said the GPS tracker that was on that bulldozer quit working on the road into the ranch. And they had all those problems with batteries, and they kept killing batteries and having to replace batteries. And when it left, that GPS tracker that's on equipment, like big equipment like that, started working as soon as it got back onto the road, which would have put it outside the bubble. So one of those things that now you kind of got an aha moment that you can kind of go back and say, okay, so now you got this theory of this bubble. How much of the data actually fits? And it seems like there's a lot that fits, but there's that zone that's causing an issue.
It will be very satisfying, Mike. I'm sorry to jump on you there, but it'll be really satisfying to do the exercise you just described, and to find out that in fact there's there's stuff that's actually gone out in the series, in the final cut, that without front loading lines up with this this concept. I've been very careful. When Pete and I talk about this, I have a longer phrase than bubble for what we're looking at. I usually say we're looking at a feature in the data. Now, how it got there is our task, if we accept it, to determine. And as we do these experiments to sort of explore that periphery, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, now why should I, if there's something there that I'm not able to see with my natural eyes, why should I assume that it's always the same shape or size? Might it be structured? Might it be dynamic? And so I've created some alternative models. One of them is behind me, actually. I've created some alternative models that also fit the data. So, I think what's going to happen is our understanding of what we're dealing with, it's just going to flesh out as time goes on.
And evolve. Yep.
And Mike, you touch on something near and dear to me, because gosh, when Erik and I met, 5-6 years ago now, we both very early on, that's a better way to put it, very early on, we both got very interested in where are things happening. And as a data point, how can we locate where things are happening? So as you just eloquently brought up, Mike, so we can track it. So the term is GIS, Geographical Information System. So we can create a GIS-like system for the ranch, and someday maybe query, where has everyone seen an orb in the last 6 weeks? Go and color them red. That kind of heat mapping. And then to put a further point on it, just when was it, Erik? April, and Erik off season. This is why we set the survey control monuments. It's so the location of everything interesting that happens that we catch can be mapped to not it's over there somewhere to it's right there.
That's absolutely superb to come up with that. It is.
Pete, you'll remember the first work we did, I think it was a Saturday, when we went out to do that first photogrammetric survey with the Firefly. And you know what I find so interesting? It's actually Mike's comment that made me think of this. I'm thinking in the moment here. Remember where we were getting the cutouts in communication back to your system at the tent?
Oh my God. I've
Uh-huh.
never thought of that.
Uh-huh.
People are going to think I'm just full of, you know what? You're
You want
right.
to tell the story?
Yes.
Please.
So I'll tell my part. So Pete and we're doing this stuff, off camera. We're actually getting the data, right? And he's got the Firefly. It's a VTOL, or vertical takeoff and landing drone platform with a camera suspended underneath. And we keep sending this thing out, and we keep coming back with no data. Remember how frustrating that was, Pete? Well, we finally got, we got the thing in the air. It's flying, it's cooperating, but we were losing communication. Now, where were we? We were on that road on approach to the command center, right? And in a zone that seems to correspond with, this boundary that we're drawing, we lost communication across the, above the mesa.
There you have it, folks. A bit of discovery in real time and no bullshit. that Erik, that's spot on. And then the rest of the story is, of course, I lost the drone. The drone fell out of the sky because, and then the data was, that part of most of the ranch is topographically flat, with the exception of the mesa. And you remember there was that 30, 45 degree bend in the mesh.
Yes.
Photogrammetry.
Yes.
And the vendor said, "Oh, that's GPS," which to me was a first. I'm like, what? But that's a great catch.
Well, it was Mike's comment that made me think of this. I hadn't put those two things together, but the fact that we're to the north of that, of that ridge line, and and that's exactly where we kept losing comms.
Wow. That's really interesting. Yeah, that.
I'm going to dig out that data again.
Every time I engage with folks, I end up giving myself more homework.
Sorry, but not sorry, really. No, because we want to hear about it.
Yeah, not to neglect the questions that have popped up.
We're gonna, And I was kind of waiting, making Linda's like, we're getting some really good questions. You really want to make everybody wait? And I said, no, let's not. So we put the one back up about the blue light on that. That when they saw the everybody on the ground, and during that one portion of the show, Travis had said there must have been 30 people that all saw this blue light shoot across while the rocket was in flight. And yet it was not captured on any camera.
None of theirs, none of mine.
Right. And how is that possible?
Well, you expect me to answer that?
Well, yeah. I mean,
right. Well, I could give you see, this is the great equalizer. These mysteries, as much as we bring, the tools and methods of science, we bring our expertise to the table. Things like this put us all kind of in the same boat. I think I made a comment when I heard the report of the pathway that this thing took, and how, however so many people saw it. I know I had cameras in this, the ranch assets. And I also know we had boots on the ground cameras, in the field. I'm like, oh yeah, we've got something here.
Has to be.
I was very bullish on, I'm sure we've got this. Boy, did I eat my words.
Yeah, and I imagine you combed over everything meticulously.
Oh yeah. Oh hell yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So the question was, how is that possible? How is it possible?
And I wonder what's more likely. Is it more likely that it avoided camera detection, or that it erased its detection by the cameras? Like maybe it was detected by the cameras, but it could manipulate the data.
That comes up a lot, Seth. The idea of some kind of either inception of information into the data or selective removal. Well, there is a precedent for that. As speculative as that is, and how, and as sort of out of the ordinary as it is, we have to allow for that possibility. I don't have a good answer for this.
Yeah.
You know, if it's visible, look, those cameras, all of them, mine, production cameras, if it's truly out there emitting light, visible light, and we perceive it as blue, or at least those who saw it did, we should have a record of that. In fact, we should have multiple records of that.
And yet nothing. Well, maybe nothing, as we will say as we go along. I remember the question I have, Erik. Why didn't they pull back the conduit with the reamer?
Stay tuned.
There you go. All right. Then again, folks, we have to be very careful. They can only talk about what has aired. So be careful with your questions, please.
But I do want to acknowledge that that's a very good common sense question, and it's the right way to think about it.
Can Erik comment on the red ox significance?
Oh, you know, I'm gonna have to write that. That's way too complicated. It goes back years before I got involved with the ranch.
Oh wow!
It's a very strange event. When Travis made that comment in one of our discussions about red ox, this is something that only, frankly, my family would know about.
All right. Well, we'll wait for that.
Yeah, I'll try. I'll do my best.
All right. One thing I did want to jump back on real quick before Bobby's. Hey, Bobby. Pete knows you.
Hey, Bobby.
Yeah. So real quick, I did want to jump back and talk about the reamer and the fact that while they went up with the drill the first time to go back in the hole for the first time since winter, and they reached that 200-foot mark. And Erik, Thomas had got on the radio and warned you, hey, we're about to hit that 200-foot mark.
Yep.
Now, we know that the editing of Prometheus sometimes will suggest things that didn't happen in that sequence, I'm going to say. But it seemed like as though right when you guys got to that 200-foot mark, things start happening. You get the 1.2 gigahertz signal pops up, and then you get a couple of 1.6 gigahertz signals pop up, like clockwork, as soon as you hit that spot. And I was going to do my best to explain, but I'm glad you're here, Erik, to explain for me, if you don't mind, the 1.2 and why did you choose, what you went to the 1.2 rather than always looking at this 1.6. And you guys were not transmitting anything at this time, 1.2 or 1.6. Am I correct on that?
Yeah. Yeah. So look, this reminds me a lot of, make of this what you will. It's just like with the thermographic imaging that we did with with Rabbi Ariel. It was one of those seemingly arbitrary choices on my part. I grabbed that thermographic camera, took it out there, had no idea that it was going to contribute what it did to the content and to our understanding of what might be going on at Homestead 2. Well, the 1.2 is on the surface seemingly just as arbitrary. It's this simple. We're not allowed by FCC rules to broadcast at 1.6 at any significant power. That is by definition jamming, and it's also by definition illegal. And so there are some, unregulated lanes, if you will, in the RF spectrum. There are no restrictions on the 1.2, and I happen to have some beacons, or actually they are audio video transmitters that work in that range. And I thought, well, I'll just exploit that. And so I retuned all the Kraken stuff. I built the phased array to accept 1.2. And this is also informed by the fact that in years before we started the series, I've noticed things showing up at all kinds of frequencies, even down in the kilohertz range. So, I'm not as married to the idea that 1.6 is, the only frequency at which we see these unusual correlative events, as some people might think I am. 1.6 is among the frequencies where strange things are going on. So we've got this perfect storm. We've got, okay, now I'm going to use 1.2. And what do we see? That's the interesting bit. As soon as I adopt this, we start seeing 1.2 showing up that isn't ours.
Yep.
And it turns out there's a precedent for that. I can't say much about it.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll tell you what, here we got a question from David Henderson. When you broadcast on, let's say, 120 megahertz frequency, do you insert any hidden discrete markers in order to tell if you are being fed back your own transmission? The other side probably would ferret it out if it saw it, but whatever's any kind of markers you could identify that you send out that you could identify were coming back to you? Or is it just a carrier?
Well, we have transmitted more than just a carrier.
Okay.
We've put information into that stream. I don't know that I would describe it as hidden. That's the thing. If you've got a spectrum analyzer, you're seeing it.
It's here. Yeah. Okay, it's there.
Yeah.
For everyone to see. Yeah. I always harken back to, and I've said this, Mike and I, with Shannon, were talking about this last week about the communication, and you guys brought it up on several occasions last night, talking about the ranch. Is a ranch trying to communicate with you? This is something that I've asked the question. I know a lot of people in the chat watching the show have asked the same question, because, and then again, in the behind the gates and also on the show, it was brought up that the ranch might be trying to communicate with you. And I know that you guys are doing, well, I'm assuming that you guys are doing whatever you can to collect that data as well. Like this here, when you're getting these, you started with the 1.2 because you chose it for whatever reasons, as you mentioned, you chose it, and now you're starting to see it come back and be broadcast. And as Mike and I mentioned last week, I think in the second episode, Travis had said it's coming from directly from the center of the triangle. Well, it's coming from that direction. We understand
That's correct.
that direction, whether it's coming from that point or not, but coming from that direction, which is still very significant coming from that direction. But you're getting those signals coming back at you now. And then as the drilling was going on and they put the reamer head on, they pulled it back in. They were not transmitting their beacon signal at 30 megahertz. I think it was around 30 megahertz. But now you're starting to pick up a range, a signal in that close to that range. And they're not transmitting the beacon. So that was interesting as well.
Seems to be a lot of mimicry going on.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing in the SDRs. Those are the ones that Travis is running. Those they're about this big, and yeah, so he's picked up quite a bit of that, 30 to 33.
Yeah, there it is. There, 29 came up.
Yeah, okay. Now I will say this on the 1.2. I've identified, I wrote some code to sort of build up a heat map of where that's coming from. And there are 3 primary directions, almost like a letter Y, relative to the South Tower. That's a fun little tidbit I can share with you. I mean, there's something going on. I don't know. I don't know who it is, where it's coming from, but it's not, it varies with time.
Interesting.
The mimicking of that, we've seen that a couple of times now where you're getting back something that you've already done. John Keel wrote a book called Operation Trojan Horse. John Keel is probably better known for the Mothman prophecies, but Operation Trojan Horse essentially is that NHIs or entities that aren't us often mimic us and trying to either hide or fit in or be unobtrusive. And by watching what we do, picking up what we're doing, and repeating it just for the sake of staying hidden. It's interesting to see that happen on the ranch.
Yeah, you might argue that one of maybe the simplest form of communication is imitation.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about how you establish kind of the Marco Polo, right? If I give you the signal that you give me with some delay, and if I give you that in return, I already know that you understand the significance of that signal because you chose it.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then if we proceed further with that model, if I do things to change it slightly and send it back to you, then we've already established that you understand and you're listening for the signal. Now you see there's volitional action. There's some change to the signal. So this kind of makes a lot of sense. And your term, that mimicry, That came up in the very first meeting that I had concerning the ranch with some of those who were formerly engaged.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is. I had Linda go. Sorry, Linda, but I had her go grab Bobby's question and bring it back up. Do you think that the limit of the perimeter of the hemisphere was created by the drilling activity or previously established on the ranch? Do you think it will expand to drill site 2?
Well, it makes me think of how, if I can jump in, it makes me think about earlier at the very beginning, you were talking about how the image of what we're shown this zone looks like. Is it a cone? Is it a bubble? It's changed. Now, is it changed because we've gained a better understanding of it, or is it changed because it's changing? So kind of in line with this question of, is our activity, creating that change? Is it our, consciousness kind of giving it power as we all feed into the show and we all say the ranch, the ranch, the ranch, and we all collectively create this entity? So that's kind of where my head goes when I read that question. I think yes.
I want to know what Pete thinks. I mean, it's his data.
Yes, it is actually.
I'm actually sitting here thinking if we must have done TLS, terrestrial laser scanning, at the triangle before the drillers.
Yes.
showed up. We must have. And so to go back and see, because it's all about timing, right? Okay. We scanned at the triangle in the same general area before the drillers were there. What I don't remember is, was there anomalous returns in those scans? We'd have to go look.
Well, Pete, I can speak to that a little bit. There were some arcs that we picked up in some of the earlier scans that we had interpreted as just happening to catch the trajectory of a launch. You remember this?
Right? Yes.
I think this is all part of the same thing. And so as was hinted at before, I think it was Mike was talking about going back retrospectively and going, okay, now that I know what I'm looking for, might it be sitting there in the data? And I think it is.
Wow.
Good one, Bobby.
Yep. Yeah. Good question. I saw one. Larry Jones just asked too, and I saw this and I thought, I hadn't thought of that before. We were talking about that 200-foot mark going into the Mesa where things seem to start happening, and he was asking about the bubble. Would the bubble? Would it maybe, because we know the drill site is incorporated into the bubble? So is that 200-foot mark like the edge of it? And that is something I don't know if we can determine that or not.
Well, the drill site is significantly within the boundary, the 610 meter boundary or 2,000-foot boundary. I can't make that connection. But again, remember something we were talking about earlier. We probably can't assume that this thing is static.
Correct. Yeah,
so
very well changed. Yep.
And I think what we'd all like to have, if we cut to the chase, is always on omnidirectional LiDAR telling us what's going on, what's the structure, what's the dynamics. Wouldn't we love to have that?
We would love to have that. Yes.
Yeah, Pete.
Yes. We would love to have seen the smoke coming from the fires have filled this area up. You're all coughing and gagging in there, and you had to get outside of the sphere to breathe because it was filling up the bubble with smoke. But, and then you poke a hole in it and it all comes out. So, yeah.
To Larry's question that was up a second ago, saying his last line was, what I can't understand are the returns from underground. Me either.
Yeah.
And more to the point, neither can the device manufacturer. I mean, you met Irene. She's a dear friend and industry expert, and she's just as baffled.
I bet she has some great stories to tell when she got back to the office. After that, go ahead, Seth. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say there's no other instances of the equipment doing this. This is a Skinwalker Ranch is unique in making the equipment do this,
Yeah. Great
or
point.
allowing light to penetrate underground.
Yeah, and I've been using TLS for 20 years. I've never seen subterranean returns anywhere in the world, anywhere.
That's crazy.
We tried some things, and Pete can attest. We tried some repeat experiments among the things that we were doing back in, I think it was April, because we are bothered by this. And so, we've gone out and tried to capture this and characterize this under different conditions when we are not doing any of the exercises that you see at the same time, whether it's rockets or drones or, something energetic.
Yeah, great point. We took the TLS out to the triangle in April with a focus on repeatability. And it's just us. There's two of us, right?
There were three. Caleb was with us, remember?
That's right. I'm sorry, Caleb.
Yeah, we went out in the truck. And,
cameras and huge production team. It's just us.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't get any weird returns.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Why? So what is the stimuli that happens and then doesn't happen? Why?
If we could answer that question, we'd be able to turn it on when we wanted to, right?
I, at this point, I can't think of a reason to want to.
Yeah, there's that.
I don't understand the nature of this thing. I'm still trying to decide whether this thing is a thing, right?
Yeah,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And so, quite honestly, it's both terrible and wonderful that we are just in a mode of observing. We're in a mode of collecting the data. T2D2.
Right. Well, I mean, like when Jay showed up on the ranch and there seemed to be a J in the data that day.
Well,
How do you not read into that and think that the ranch isn't a thing?
Yeah, I get it.
If
I use a term, constellation of facts, right? Where the facts we have are the stars and the constellations are the connective lines that we need to find some sort of structure and order and causality and mutual relationships between things. I'm not criticizing it. I'm saying it was important to our ancestors' survival to do that sort of thing. And so that's kind of what we're doing when we look at this. And we do see, a shape. And we go, there's a J. Well, his name is J.
Yeah.
The only belief system I bring to this is that if we take enough data, we'll eventually be able to sort it out.
Yes. Yes. That's a given. Yep. Got it. And you have to keep doing that, and the painstaking part is going through all of that data. And I know you got so much time on your hands. You never sleep anyway. So, you can stay up all night and keep crunching.
I crash.
I like when you asked that question on the show. You asked who was going to stay up that night and help you go through all the data.
Yeah.
Everybody's like,
did they put that in the final cut?
Yeah, they did. They did. And everybody's looking the other way.
Yep.
Pete's like, yeah, I don't think. Does the 2,000-foot radius of the sphere happen to be right on some point as the 200-foot mark into the Mesa? Oh, that's the one I asked earlier. Yeah, I did. I grabbed that one earlier.
It's well within the radius.
Yeah,
the drill site's well within the radius.
Yeah, and probably that 200-foot probably is too.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I would imagine it is. So, all right, let's jump along here real quick as because we got lots more to cover. So here we go. Now the next day they got the guys out here. You got Dave Mason coming out with his instrumentation, of course, and Pete on the scene. And Dave brought with him something that I was hoping, Pete, when you came along, I was hoping that you or Erik would be able to give a little bit of a definition of this, describe this instrument a little bit better so I could understand it, or maybe even Mike, because he's an engineer anyway. But he brought along a differential FLIR technology.
Super important, very important.
Yeah. So what is the differential? What makes that?
I could do it, but I've already talked too much. Mike, you want to take it?
Oh, I knew you were going to do that. Well, he said not commercially available.
Yes,
So
right.
I assume this is his invention. Is that true?
Yes,
That
it
he's
is.
developed this? Yeah.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I just
No.
so I actually do know quite a bit about it, and this is you get the sense if you talk to Dave, this is his pride and joy, you know, and rightly so. What he's done is he's modified a thermographic camera such that it does a kind of a baseline, if you will. Imagine taking a picture, and I do this a bit with Metaframe, this thing that I've been using. It's some code that I wrote recently. You take the baseline and you call that your flat field. That's your starting point. And so what you're showing are changes from that starting point. And he's also got the resolution down to, if I remember right, millikelvin. Think of it as a thousandth of a degree Celsius. And so he's able to he's showing us a picture of not what's there, but how is what's there changing. Okay. And that's very enabling. That kind of differential analysis is very empowering.
Do you think that's why we saw the cold spots the way we did? Because of that? Was that instrument that he was using that showed those cold spots?
Pete, I wasn't boots on the ground out there for most of the exercise, but is that how you recall?
Yeah, and I used a lot of bad language when I saw that because it literally made no sense. Because those fires were significant, an amazing amount of heat and energy being put into the atmosphere, and not just a cold spot, because it's of course color coded, but it's black cold, which I thought was just mind numbing, and it remained. For, if I remember right, most of the experiment. I think it came and went maybe a couple of times, but was present a lot more than it wasn't. And that just, I used to have a certification in thermography. It just didn't make any sense. The only thing that I could think of is, and help me out with the language here, is assuming it's all relative, that is the color scale.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if the brightest stuff is, 1,000,000 degrees and the black stuff is 900,000 degrees, then it's not quite as weird.
Right.
But still interesting.
Yeah. And that's what I was wondering.
It's true that if we take, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just wondered. That's what I was kind of wondering during the show is what were the ranges of their, between the black and the super bright colors. I'm sorry.
That's the right question. That is the driving question. Once you've seen it, so what I think draws our attention is that the feature is persistent. So it stays in one location. And also any geometry, like if it has any peculiar geometry, we're looking for that. Mm-hmm. I don't remember seeing a legend or a scale with those images as far as what the upper and lower limits were on the temperature. Yeah. But generally speaking, if you take a thermographic camera, pointed at the sky, unless you've got clouds, you're going to see black.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. I've used a thermal imaging camera quite a bit when I used to do a lot of paranormal investigations, and I had a really nice one that I took out in the field with me. So, so it does matter on those ranges. I saw that question you had up there, Linda. If you can, I know I'm going to ask you to pop. There it is, right there. A Y-shaped 3-point signal? ? Is that not a triangulated GPS sat nav or military pinpoint location signaling system used by the satellites for tracking electronic devices on Earth?
So, Jeff, I think that question probably follows my earlier comment about where, when I build up a heat map of where the Kraken thinks the 1.2 is coming from. Mm-hmm. What I'm saying is that it says, okay, I've got a dominant signal coming from over here. We'll call it, northeast. And then it switches immediately to a dominant signal, say, to the northwest. And when I say northwest, I'm saying I'm referencing that to the instrument itself, which is in this southern part of the property,
right?
And then something to the south. So It's not doing it all at once. It's not hop. It's those hops are infrequent. It just seems like we're dealing with, potentially 3 sources. I don't know who it is. I don't know what it is. But now that we've seen it, we can follow up on it.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen that actually in the when they show you sitting in the command center, and you can see it up on you have it up on a upper left screen up there, and you can see the little Kraken, like it makes a little oval shape. You can see it here.
They showed the polar plots. Did they show the circular?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. If you're watching, you can. I'm always looking in the background. Half the time, especially in the command center, I'm looking around at what's on his monitors up there. That's just fascinates me.
I'll give you the tour sometime.
Love it. Okay, so that's a great that Kraken. That's perfect. And I love
do me a favor and remember that boxing panda bear icon.
Yeah.
Remember that.
Okay.
As we go on.
Okay. All right. All right. So the next thing I had up was when you guys actually started this experiment. You got those containers out there. Here's a wide shot of it happening. Everything's burning out there now. Before that happened, of course, here's even Pete. Pete's out there handling some of the lumber, getting everything loaded up and put into the container so you can get the fire going. Look at him. He's working hard, this guy, but I thought that was, he's not, he's not going to just stand around and fly drones. I mean, come on.
My walker was off camera.
Here's some of the equipment that Dave Mason brought to bear, which I think is awesome. I love this high-speed stuff that he brings in the FLIRs. Really cool information. Here's a shot of things there before the experiment even got started. Just a quick look at his screen that he had there. And of course, there's Pete with his drone in the air, looking at everything before the fires took place. And you also had the terrestrial laser scanner there as well, which I'm glad. And I remember that you had talked about it, and then Travis asked you, did you bring it with you? And you're like, of course I did. Yes, it's here. And he's like, great. I grabbed this picture here because I wanted to ask you, this was brought up before, this screen to your left. Tom had asked this question. We were looking at the screen trying to figure, again, always looking in the background at stuff, and first of all, what is this? What are you looking at here? And why is this one so much lower than the rest?
I'm glad you're asking that. So what you're seeing there is the live display of information from what I refer to, not very creatively, as the multi-physics boxes. These are the devices deployed at different locations around the ranch that are looking at a variety of things, including radiation counts, GPS stability, the location of the GPS sensor, the number of satellites involved in calculating the position, because your sensor sees some number of satellites, right? And it's not always the same. That circled 13 is the outlier sort of low number for one of the sensors on one of the boxes. That's the satellite count. We have magnetometers, we have integrated RF, integrated over a certain range, RF power received. So all of those things are being shown in real time in that interface there to my left.
Nice. I love this. The command center to me is the place. I could spend all my time sitting in that room right there, just with all that technology everywhere around you.
Be careful what you say out loud.
I know. Well, I used to be a radioman in the Navy, and I was in the Radio Shack. We were confined to the Radio Shack all the time. And when we finally got upgraded with some of the newer satellite technology, it was awesome. I was loving life in there because it was everything had changed, and we got screens and stuff. It was like my own command center. It was so cool. I enjoyed it.
I see a great question for Pete here.
Yeah. Could every LiDAR pulse be getting a max range return from the range counter being consistently triggered somehow?
I'm not quite sure what Larry's asking, but my first thought, well, let's start with the max range of the scanner. which is 350 meters, which is about 1,200 feet,
Mhm.
right? So if we're getting returns out at 610 meters, aka 2,000 feet, there must be a part of this I'm not.
I don't know if he was the one that asked that question, the one that I asked you last week or
Mhm.
before last week about the limit, because somebody was saying, well, the reason you're getting this 2,000-foot barrier is because that's the limit of that particular terrestrial laser scanner. And I was like, I didn't know the answer to that, so that's why I went to you and said, what is the limit? So it's 350.
350 meters.
So if it's reading something at 2,000 or 610 meters, then that's an anomaly.
So you can appreciate my my broader concern about what's going on with the instrument. What is potentially incepting or injecting that data into the data set? Because it's not even supposed to be able to measure stuff that far out, right?
No.
Right. And over again. We're like,
Right.
how many times?
Yeah.
25 plus times.
Mhm.
Yeah. So this is strangeness squared. It's not just strangeness.
Right. Yeah, that was the kind of a neat little bit that I was looking at with Travis when at the end of the show, he was looking at the dome and the camera was looking straight up at the top of it where it intersects at the point. And he was looking at the circles and he said, okay, there's a circle here, a circle here, a circle here, a circle here. And they were changing. So I thought, oh, are these different data sets as it's, scanning? Because it looked like they were moving, just slightly moving. So I thought, oh, it's not just one image out of thousands; it's many images out of thousands. I'm assuming.
This would be a good time for Pete to explain how that scan process works, because it's you've got the head of this thing rotating over a fairly lengthy period of time.
Yeah. So that particular scanner, if I remember right, 1,000,000 points per second. You've seen it. It's basically a box about that big. The laser shoots this way into the rotating mirror. The mirror is at 45 degrees. So the laser hits that spinning mirror and the laser fires 1,000,000 times a second in basically a half sphere. Yeah. Thank you for the image.
It's kind of an arc. At any given moment in time, it's tracing an arc.
Exactly. Excuse me.
Sorry.
What else? I get asked a lot about, well, what's the hole? Why is there that black hole? This is a great image. You see below the mirror, the gray spot. You see how it's angled?
Right here.
Basically, the blind spot for the laser is directly under the device. Yep. And that's why. That gives you a visual as to why there's that black circle, a void of data, which shows you, among other things, where the scanner was when it was running. So, yeah, 1,000,000 points a second, 350 meter range. Just because I loved it when I saw it, when I watched the episode. A lot of a fair amount of the footage in the episode is shot with IR video. Did anybody other than the LiDAR nerd, me, notice the scan lines going across Travis, Caleb, the ground? If you'll see them, it's really cool because that's invisible to anything other than an IR video camera.
Yeah, there was a scene where Thomas was talking and you could see it zip, 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 zip on his face as he was talking. Yeah, and I said, oh, there's the terrestrial laser scanner going.
I'm not the only nerd.
Guilty. The LiDAR data seems to indicate the data below the ground, but LiDAR cannot go underground. Doesn't this suggest there might be some sort of a time anomaly? The return pings are being retracted, coming back.
My favorite theory.
Yeah.
But I underscore theory, and even theory is a little too elegant. We used to call this kind of thing a wag, which is a wild ass
Wow,
guess.
Yeah, yeah.
But you know, in talking about it with Erik, it's you know, it's one. It how do I say this without? I don't know. It's one. It's one explanation that actually fits from existing understanding of light physics. And Erik, God, I remember when you first said this to me, I damn near fell out of my chair. Meaning, if you know time was compressed or expanded, then so would the beam of light, and that could explain why. So anyway, my favorite theory.
So if you imagine some prevalent influence there, where we're taking the measurement, interfering with the device's ability to account for time. So imagine something that's affecting the internal clock. You know, I know Mike can say this more succinctly than I can. But if you've got these clocks, you've got these oscillators inside the device. Well, what if the reckoning of the time of flight, the TOF of the laser, is being monkeyed with by whatever is out there? You know, and it could be. It seems more sophisticated than simple electromagnetic interference or EMI, but I suppose it could be. And so again, this goes right to the heart. You know, the question that was just asked is a great one because it goes to the heart of, are we seeing something physically real? In other words, out there, or is it somehow being incepted into the data? Is it through the instrument? You know, and the question is, what's the mechanism? And so that's why you see, you know, the experiments to try to go out to the indicated boundary, you know, the bubble that we've been talking about, and see if in fact the data bear out the existence of this kind of membrane. And some of what we've talked about today suggests that it does.
Well, the other component I love, and of course, I can't do this justice. Erik can, is we're talking about the speed of light. It's 186,000 miles per second. So if time is being screwy, even if it's like a millisecond, we're still talking a great distance.
Yeah.
Right. It just fascinates me.
Wasn't it the guys that brought out the balloon? And we never really saw too much more about this data, but the guys that brought out the balloon and all the data hanging from it, Lunason, and they flew it over, and that is where we picked up that, wasn't it a quarter of a second or something?
Yeah, they lost time.
Yeah, that was huge in my mind. Anyway, I was floored when I heard that. Yeah, we haven't heard too much more about that particular technology that he brought, but yeah, that was definitely huge.
Which another soundbite, and I'm sure this came from Erik, was, you know, yeah, we need to be paying attention about where things happen. We also need to be paying attention to when things happen. I just love that.
Yep.
Yeah, my favorite way to go at the point cloud data is to look over a very narrow time interval and to sweep that interval through the data, because every point has a timestamp. There are things to be learned from that. And so that's been my MO. In fact, I've been trying to make my own software tool to do that with the raw data. Wow. It crashes all the time.
Jackie
data sets are huge.
Jackie and Grover, easy answer. No.
Wow. There you go.
Right.
Good question, though.
Yep.
Okay, so let's. I see you put up a picture. I'm about to jump into all those images about the cold spot. And the first one, the first picture I had here, was this one here. Not those are all my images, of course. This one here, and this shows the fire getting going from the one of the drones, and then the first cold spot that shows up. Well, at least for us that we saw on the camera. This cold spot that shows up, and then there are some more, and it kind of moved around a little bit, kind of morphing and changing a little bit, but basically staying in the same area. And this one I grabbed because I saw these two little lines shoot through here, and I thought, oh my gosh, what was that? And I come to find out, here's another one, here's another one here. It's probably bugs that are flying by in front of the camera, is my thought to that. Again, you see them here shooting by these. You see on that when it's actually moving and it's video, you can see them zip, zip, you know.
Or
I'm
Sparks coming off the fire.
It could be
Sparks.
sparks, yeah.
Yeah.
Could be sparks.
Mhm.
Things flying off there, but moving pretty fast, whatever they are. It was going pretty quickly, and I just grabbed those two. And then there was this one here again, and I had used the one picture I created that for tonight's thumbnail was the one showing the blob that was seen as the rocket was going up to it, and that blob was there, and then of course the final the one that you guys were looking at, I think it's the one that you've got listed down below. That was too similar in my mind, the two things together, and about the same height. To me, that's kind of validating that there is definitely something there in that spot. Could the black represent hot and not cold? Deep black, maybe be deep red.
It's certainly possible that David would change the mode back and forth during the course of the exercise. That would be a great question for David. What I can tell you from looking at this is that image was not differential, but was just the native FLIR. He usually has a label on the differential stuff.
Okay.
You'll see the word difference. So this would be a great question to it'd be good to put this data in front of him and have him speak to this.
I would love to get a hold of him and see if he wants to come on sometime and talk with us for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So this is about the time that Travis shoots off one of his rockets. It launches very straight. And then we've got the hanging in the air. But I want to back up on this for just a moment before we get to that. I actually wanted to, let me switch over here because I want to bring up this is something that I had noticed when we were watching the episode last night, and we saw the FLIR going, and you're looking at the fire going by and you're seeing the cold spots appear. It was really hard at that point for me to say, you could see that the temperature, heat signatures were moving, like flowing, like the smoke. And the cold I thought was as well. But then I actually started to mess around a little bit with the data or the video that I have. And I wanted to bring this up real quick. I'm going to, let's see, if I can grab this quickly here. I'll try not to take too much time doing this. Let's see. Okay, here we go. All right, now this is and I'm going to go back and forth on this data a little bit. This is looking at the fire as it's moving, and I'm going to stop it here because part of this, and the reason I'm doing this is because I wanted to show an example. Okay, there's a good one right there. Now I'm going to pause that. Now you watch the fire or the heat signature on here, the yellow and the very bright, almost white color, and then the cold spots. And as I move this back and forth, you can see the cold spot is not moving at all. And the fire is moving. The heat signature is moving. And I didn't notice that until I was really starting to edit the software a little bit, or the video, I'm sorry, to edit the video a little bit and look at that. It's not really moving that much, but you can see the heat, especially down here on the bottom, you can see it move by in front of the cold spot. So I was wondering, is a cold spot closer to the camera than the heat, or was it behind it, or are they about the same spot? And if you notice down here, look at down toward the bottom, you can see on this one section right here, you can see that the heat is moving in front of it.
Yeah, I noticed that too, Jeff.
Okay, all right. I think I'm understanding what I'm seeing. This suggests to me that we are looking at his differential, and what may have happened is we have, imagine a hot zone, okay, and you zero on that, and then if that gets carried away, if whatever's so hot, the flame, the smoke gets carried away, then it would make sense for that to go black. Okay. So it could be that the persistence of what we're seeing in this case has to do with the baselining. That's why, this is to be, I might be able to set up an example of that, using some of my tools here, but I think I'm starting to understand a little better. Normally, I would expect to see a word on the screen here that says differential, but I think this may be differential. And this is an example of a question that I would want to circle back with Dave about, because it's not hard to imagine that you have something hot, coming up through the center, and then conditions change. Right. And that being your baseline, it says, well, anything by comparison is quite cold. So I'd like to get an answer to that myself.
Yep. Yeah. So that,
it's a really good catch, Jeff. Really good.
Yeah. And like I said, I didn't actually notice it until I was going through the video, and then I was scrubbing it back and forth. And sure enough, I noticed that it's not moving at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that's crazy.
Yeah. We will do ourselves a favor by asking Dave what was happening at that point in time.
Right. Okay. Perfect. That's that's what I had on that. That was I had to try to bring that up and at least show it tonight, because I was amazed by what I was seeing there, because I did not get that interpretation of it while watching the episode. And that's why I love going back through this and capturing these things and then showing it to everybody else, because you or anybody in the chat might have gone, oh, that's because of XYZ. Oh, well, I didn't know that,
Yeah.
And thanks for the answer. But anyway,
boy, wouldn't it be great if everyone could watch what's going out with that level of engagement? That'd be fantastic.
Yeah. I wonder if we can get Dave Mason on the live
Ooh.
Q&A tomorrow night for the Insiders. So, again, the Insider program, folks, you really should, if you're not part of it, you should check it out. Use Dragon, promo code Dragon, and get a month, because you will not be dissatisfied with it.
I can't make any commitments on his behalf.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
but I'm just expressing my desire to have his, for us to hear it from him.
Okay, so Michelle says 1 week. My bad.
Well, the Dragon
not a
code.
month. It's a
Dragon
week
code
free.
gets you a week free.
Oh, a week free. Oh, okay.
Oh.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So let's get back to the rocket. So Travis shoots this rocket up in the air, and when it gets up there, it goes up, beautiful flight, pops, chute comes out, and then it's hanging there in midair. Now, I didn't catch how long at first until I watched the Behind the Gates with Maddie Blake after. And then in there, he said he thought it was about 10 seconds. Of course, Prometheus time, it seemed like it was a minute, It's like, wait a minute, this thing's hanging up there forever. He's shouting at everybody, look at that, look at that, look at that. It's going on for a long time. But, obviously 10 seconds was about all we got. So, again, my initial thought was, well, it's thermal from all the heat going up there. It's holding up in the air.
Mm-hmm.
That was my initial thought. We had that one last season when he was heading towards Homestead 2, because there was a signal coming from that way.
Mm-hmm.
He found it to be straight up when he got over by the field right there by Homestead 2, got out, shot a rocket. Same thing happened in the middle of the day.
Mm-hmm.
It was hanging there. Was that a thermal updraft also? I don't know. It's just too strange. More high strangeness, right? What's your take?
That was my first thought. We were putting a whole lot of energy, a whole lot of hot air into the environment.
Right.
And I mean a lot. These fires were big and they were hot. I don't know whether I should say this out loud, but we burnt up a dumpster. I'm not kidding. There were holes in it.
We had a literal dumpster fire. That's awesome.
Wow.
I believe the term is container. It's called a container, Pete.
Yes. Wow. That's hot.
I was watching and I thought, all right, let's crack open the ice chest, get some music playing. We've got a bonfire party going on.
Yeah.
Launch some rockets. Woo.
S'mores.
Post your marshmallow standing 30 feet away.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Just hold
Had
the
your
marshmallow up in
clothes
the air.
melt off your body. It was hot.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But very cool. Now, so there, we got this picture of it, and there it is hanging up there in the air. And this shot here was it again. And actually in this one here, as I think where it was starting to descend, you can actually see the two container fires happening right here directly below, almost directly below them, below it. Was this a camera from the south field? Was this that far? Because it looks like it's quite a ways away. This
That looks
particular
like
camera.
from the command center. You can see the
This
Mesa.
looks like it's from the east. So we're looking from a position to the east
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
of the triangle. But
On the command
from the
center.
looks of it, I'd say that's a production camera view. That
Okay.
mine were kind of grainy during this exercise.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure where they landed that. They might have put that camera on the arc. We could ask.
So this is the one from last season that happened out in the field, and I remember watching it. And Thomas in the behind the gates gave a very good explanation of it. He said normally you would expect to see that if it was held in a thermal updraft, that the chute would be steady, but the rocket would be kind of dangling and moving around underneath it. But in this case here, it barely moved at all. Now, obviously, in the nighttime one, we can't really see it that closely, but we can see. Oh, you sent me a picture. Okay. But in the nighttime one, we get to see a little bit more. Now, here's another little clip I got that I wanted to show. This shows the rocket going up there, and then there it is hanging in the air. Now, you'll notice it kind of blank out a little bit. As you'll see it, the light actually fade right there and right there. It fades away a little bit for a moment. And I think that is because it is moving. It's probably dangling up there and it is moving around a little bit. And this also answers another question for me and for Mike maybe as well. The question we talked about last week about the light on the actual rocket itself. When the rocket was coming down last week and it was lawn darting into the ground, it looked like it was a blinking light on it. And there was times where I thought maybe it was a blinking light that was on the side of it to begin with. And Erik had mentioned, well, I wasn't in the field. I'm not sure. This one was a steady light. So, it had a steady light on it all the time. Now I believe this is infrared. That's why we're seeing it this way, but it's not blue in this particular case. And we saw the blue light on the one from last week. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out, that it could have been a solid light on the one last week. And we just, it was in fact blinking, but yeah, you can definitely see this one, fade. You can see it blink out there just for a moment as it was hanging there. So, and then it started to descend about 10 seconds. It was up there. So again, it's repeatable. Had it happened before. But what is the cause of it happening? Still don't really know for sure. I mean, we don't have enough data, right?
I would say that the connection is tenuous, but it's vaguely reminiscent of what we saw with the canisters. Yeah, we've seen unexpected falling object behavior on several occasions, and so maybe this is part of that same narrative. I again. I was in here.
Yeah. And that's the time where, I talked about how I'd love to be inside the command center and get to experience that place.
Yeah.
But they're doing an experiment in the field. I don't know. Where do I want to be?
The answer is yes. The answer is you want to be omnipresent on this ranch.
Yes, for sure. I just, Pete, you're always out there in the field, getting to watch it and participate and fly a drone around and stuff. And Caleb, walking around with the slam scan and his backpack, he's cruising around doing stuff. It's like, man, it's all exciting. So anyway, so we got to see that, and that was really, really cool. There was also the point where you started to douse the fire a little bit and get more smoke injected into the air. Now realize too, this was something that with smoke, you get particulate. And being former in the safety industry, knowing that masks are, wearing masks all the time, you got that particulate that's in that smoke, all that stuff in there. And I'm thinking, with the fact that you were able to
Lost
capture
your audio, Jeff.
What's that? You can't hear me?
I'm hearing him just fine.
Oh, okay.
We got it. Pete, might be you.
Can you hear me?
Pete's
Okay.
been
Can
Pete's
you hear
been
me now?
skinwalkered.
Pete, can
We
you
can
hear me
hear
now?
Yes.
I don't know.
Pete's good at troubleshoot that.
Okay, keep going. All right, he's
yeah,
going to
keep
troubleshoot.
going.
All right, but talking about the particulate in the smoke, and I come across this situation with Pete, which is how we got into the conversation for him to come on tonight. Was I was asking him about the smoke. The smoke showed up in his LiDAR, and immediately I was wondering, can it see in this smoke? Can it see the smoke? And is it because of the particulate? Is that why? I mean, I don't know. And so I was going to, let me bring up that picture real quick of that. And here it is here. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. All right. So this is the terrestrial laser scanner, I'm assuming, correct? Looking at the smoke.
I think this was SLAM, actually.
Oh, the SLAM. Okay. Yeah, because it had that dome there, and I wasn't sure. But a couple of things that pointed out right away on this smoke. First of all, the fact that it's showing up on LiDAR, which I didn't know it could do that. But the second thing is that right angle that it had on the left, right there. That's kind of weird. And also the straight line, pretty much a straight line to the road over here on this side, as if it were contained inside of a barrier. It had barriers around it in some way. Pete, I know I couldn't give it justice to try to explain. First of all, how does it see the smoke in the first place?
Well, something either has to have mass or reflectivity. So particulates, absolutely.
Yeah, particulate, yeah. Okay.
Or if the smoke is particularly dense, I would imagine, it wouldn't surprise me to get returns that way. Now that sort of right angle, my first thought would be wind direction. Okay. And trying to understand what I'm looking at. But, why would a smoke pattern, show up like that? It's, yeah.
Especially when there's two sources.
Yeah, it's just, so it's really strange. And then made even stranger by, why is there a boundary at the fence line?
So I think it's important to keep in mind that what we're looking at has to be thought of as a LiDAR long exposure. These images are being built, these models or point clouds are being built over a period of time. It's tempting to look at this and say that everything we see is simultaneously going on. And I think, again, this goes right to the point we were talking about earlier. My preoccupation with looking at things in the time domain, watch the actual data collection process. And this is a great example of one that, I'd like to look at this in a windowed sort of progression as we move the beginning and end time for allowing the display of the points in the data. It might help us to understand how things are changing in time here. Because you mentioned the wind, Pete. You could have the wind blowing, predominantly to, let's say, the south at one point during the scan, and then it could have switched direction and gone predominantly to the east, let's say. And so in order to sort that out, I think we have to look at this kind of data in the time domain.
Yeah, agreed. And Jeff, you had an image, it's been some time ago now, up previously where we saw, it's funny, I noticed it, we saw smoke coming off the containers. Does that ring a bell? Do you put that back up?
Yeah, let me see if I can find it. Was it this one?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean,
you'll see, I want to say in my head, my mind's eye, it might look similar to that pattern in the LiDAR. which would be a surprise to me.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's been a while. I mean, we're at about an hour and a half now, but I remember seeing the smoke in an image you put up and went,
Was it this one?
sorry, no.
Was it a LiDAR image or was it a?
No, it's an actual, it's
Okay.
probably a screen grab. It might have been infrared from, one of the infrared Prometheus video cameras.
Was it the
Sorry.
FLIR
No,
footage that we were looking at? No. Okay.
no. And sorry, don't let me take you down the rabbit hole.
No, go ahead.
Pete, what were you expecting the smoke to look like? Have you caught smoke on
Good
that scanner
question.
before?
I had never attempted to scan smoke
Right.
before.
Why would you?
Yeah.
Right? It's another one of these. Yeah, okay, let's see what happens.
That one?
No, sorry. You'll be able to see the dumpsters and the flames and smoke coming out of them.
Yeah, there was this one here with the rocket going up, and you can see it going out of there.
It's.
Hmm.
Do you can you share your whole list of images?
Yeah. Let me
I might
close
be able to see it, spot it from the thumbnail.
yeah, it's hard. Just they're very, very small. The ones that the LiDAR images are down here. Let's see.
I'm sorry about this.
No, it's okay. No, absolutely.
This is what we're here for, to get into the nitty gritty and
Yeah,
go, wait,
absolutely.
what was that? And let me see.
Yeah, guys, we're in my comfort zone now.
Okay.
Yep.
God, am I imagining this? I know I saw it.
Yeah. These are all I
In the
had.
middle on the right side up, 2 more.
This one.
Nope, over to the right and down
Who?
one.
What's that one?
This is the overhead.
Yeah,
with
yeah,
the
let's
streak
look at
down
that.
on the
Yes.
container.
See what I'm talking about?
It's an image of one of the containers with some wood in it on fire.
And
Yep.
look at the pattern.
Yeah, the
Smoke.
light
It's a
getting
triangle.
caught in the smoke.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
The smoke looks like a triangle.
Wow,
It
it
looks
is.
like
right
that
here.
corner
yeah.
mirrored in the LiDAR.
It really is. I hadn't noticed that. Wow. So you got like an edge here
Yeah.
Mhm.
and another one here.
Which suggests wind coming, blowing. That would be
Right,
west,
going
west
this
to
way.
east. Yeah. Anyway,
That's-
humans are really good at seeing patterns, and I think I just saw one.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that is. I didn't even catch that. Right. All right.
Okay.
And now you've got in that same pattern or similar type of corner showing up in the other picture.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, Seth, to your point, I don't have a lot of experience scanning smoke. This is my one, use case. So I don't have things to compare it to. But I think Erik, as usual, Erik makes the most valuable point. Let's look at the data in terms of time, which we can do.
Yeah, it's generally the
Sure.
case that, with these longer wavelengths, and I don't know if you're running at 1064 or what that wavelength is on the instrument. So I'm talking about the number of nanometers, right? So you're over a micron in wavelength, I think. And, that those longer wavelengths will penetrate. You'll get fewer actual returns. They'll actually go through particulates more than, say, shorter wavelengths. And so the yield on that is probably low. And so you said exactly, it makes sense to me, Pete. When you've got a lot of, very dense smoke, you have a fighting chance of characterizing that plume. Most of that's probably going to just either, punch right on through or never get returned at all.
Yeah, I think
It still leaves the weird boundary that mirrors the fence line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Yep.
Was it windy that night? I remember
Yeah.
Travis mentioning that there wasn't any when the rocket stopped, but not otherwise. Yeah, it didn't look very windy at all that night.
It was just a gentle breeze.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weather recording. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
You always do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, unless we lose connectivity with the weather station, we data log the winds, and of course they're variable, but they were light through most of this exercise. There was a period of time when I observed the wind went predominantly to the south, and then it reversed direction, went back to the north, as viewed through the cameras close to the command center, like CCO3, or a camera that we call OP1SW. Which is the label, it's the label for the camera on OP1, which is sometimes called the black box.
One of the things Travis, and this was going back to the smoke in the LiDAR, Travis had made this comment. So what you typically see on a red light LiDAR, I thought he said the word red LiDAR, looking through the clouds or smoke, it would be hazy. You would lose contrast. LiDAR was working well through the smoke, giving a return as if there was something there. He had made that comment when he was talking about this, and so that's why I reached out to you, Pete, because I wanted to see just what, first of all, I didn't know that it could. And you think about the heavy particulate. If there's particulate, then it has something to return on, for sure. Opposed to the sky, when you're out and you get the terrestrial laser scanner picking up a dome in the night sky, I thought, well, would there be enough moisture in the air to make it reflect back? Would moisture even reflect back an image? So
Rain does.
Rain does.
Yep.
So, but you said this has happened 25 some times. In doing it now, was that 25 scans, or was that 25 different times you've had the terrestrial scanner out there? You made that comment about maybe
Both.
5 different
Both.
times. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the night she doesn't show up there. Yeah. See what happened, Shannon? I'm sorry. You didn't, you couldn't make it tonight, so I had to find some people to fill in. You're a hard act to follow, so we needed this many people to cover you. So.
Yeah, you see, Shannon, since you're not here, we're in the weeds. You could have.
She keeps us out of the weeds.
Bring her in. We need a referee.
Yeah.
No, I enjoy exploring the weeds. Obviously.
This was a picture that you shared. Whoops. What happened here? Hold on. Let's see. This one. Ooh, look at that.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
It's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Stay Puft Marshmallow.
I see it. He's dancing for us.
Now, my question is whatever this is running to us or away from us?
Ooh. I'd say running towards you. I would be a little concerned, to be honest.
I remember when we first saw this, Erik. We were there in the command.
Yes.
We were giggling, so I couldn't.
Yes.
But it's, yes, okay, I'm making light of it, but is it me, or does it look like I see, what was it, the dancing bear from like the Grateful Dead tribe? I see the dancing baby. I see the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And then, I could get really creative and think, well, is whatever this is running into the fire or out of it? And we really just pissed somebody off.
Yeah. I don't think that's the entity. If there is an entity you want to piss off, I don't know. The Running Man. There you go, Frank.
The Running Man is a famous piece of history. It was a fun debate years ago.
So the one that I had that I wanted to let's see. Okay, so I got to get rid of this one first, and then bring this one up. This is kind of what I had thrown together. First, we had the blob that was found. This is when the rocket went up and was really sparking its way up there, and then appeared to crash into it and exploded. And then, of course, we have the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in the middle. Which and these are all in the same spot. They're in the same area right there at the triangle. And then you've got the smoke LiDAR. And Erik, during the command center, you had gotten up out of your chair, walked around, and was actually showing this section right here in the middle of the, you had highlighted this area here in the smoke image, and you were asking those guys to tell you where it was in relation to the image in the middle, which is of the cold spot. And they guided you to say, yep, it was right there. So all three of these are basically coming from the same spot. When I look at something like that, I'm thinking that it has, it's looking at three different forms of technology, seeing similar thing in the same spot. That's, to me, that's remarkable. Very remarkable.
Yeah. Any feature that has the endorsement of multiple witnesses is, of course, interesting to us. And I think the nice thing about that is, that's built into the way our minds operate. It's what we call common sense. It's dang interesting when you see three things saying you've got something there, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. This is crazy. I'm sorry. Somebody was going to say something?
No, I was just,
Oh,
I love it. It's three different sensors, three different questionable data points.
Yep.
Really interesting.
Yeah. All from the same area, and so, somebody is talking about this fire and saying, oh, well, come on, is that really an experiment? And I look back at it, and this is what I wrote in this description of tonight's podcast, was talking about the fact that you did this experiment burning. You wanted the thermal and you wanted the smoke. And I think that you've got something very, very, you got a lot of data from this, maybe data that you weren't expecting to get, but a lot of data came from this. A simple experiment of burning a couple of container fires and infiltrating the area with thermal and with smoke, and look at the data. And we're not even, I know that as viewers of the TV show, we're not even aware of all the data you may have collected on this, but from what we saw, this is remarkable.
Well, to your point, Jeff, I spent some time last night. It was kind of fun looking at the raw recordings using a Discord screen share with some of the insiders. And I had to start that discussion with the caveat that I might be seeing pieces of it for the very first time. I mean, the reality is, when we are essentially in boot camp out here for 14 weeks, running in this, frenetic cadence, we don't always have time to review on a frame by frame basis, the entire event. And so you have a several hour event as viewed from many cameras. I want to say 15 or 16 records, and they're on the order of hours in length. And so we enjoyed just looking for outliers, things that don't belong, geometry that we just don't really know how to account for. And, I think that's kind of a joyful exploration, frankly. It's yes, it's science. We're looking at raw data, and we're asking ourselves the question of, does this geometry belong? Would Mother Nature volunteer this really? Is this consistent with our experience with, bonfires and so forth? And so we did that activity for quite some time last night, and we'll probably do some more of it. I'm tempted to jump in and do some data exploration with the point clouds, some of your work, Pete. Maybe sometime we can do that as kind of a shared live event.
Oh, yeah. Case in point, that image you just had up, Jeff.
Yeah. I'll bring it back.
Yeah, and people are commenting on what's, the elephant in the room here, image-wise, is that straight edge. Now, what's interesting about that angled piece that we were looking at, in my head, it's plan view. We're looking straight down, and then went down the rabbit hole and found the image of it. Well, this is where it also got strange, is when you look at it in perspective, that it's actually straight in the vertical as well. And smoke does not do that.
No, it does not.
Especially when there's a breeze.
Pete, I'll tell you that same observation is borne out in the views in the visible plus near infrared from CCO3 and from OP1SW. We saw this. We were talking about the same kinds of things. And so this is really neat because it corroborates what I was looking at with the insiders
Okay.
last night.
And
I was
just
going to ask if y'all were able to see that on the ground or observe it with any other cameras or tech. So sounds that answered my question. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's also a great indicator of we're having a conversation about time and being able to look at a point cloud, whether it's from SLAM or TLS, and look at it with a time setting. A great example of this is all the ghosting. You see all the people. No, we don't have a cast and crew of hundreds of thousands. Those are just, two or three of us
all down here.
moving.
Yeah.
We're just moving. And every time that scanner rotates and the beam hits us, we're frozen in time. And then it also, I've made this point over the years that, this technology hates motion. And that's where we're using it so creatively at the ranch is so much is in motion. In this case, people, smoke. You might be wondering, well, what are those little clouds that go straight up and then to the right? It's a drone.
Oh, is it? Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
In different positions. That's fun.
And again, in the technical term is ghosting.
Yep.
Is this, but it can be really useful when, we're doing this type of experiments on the property. It's like, yeah, it hates motion. It's not designed for that. But look at the stuff we're seeing because we're using it creatively.
Yep.
Well, you say it hates motion, but you just have to look at it differently. You have to accept that what it's showing you is not how things are at any given time, but it's showing you a dynamic.
Right.
It's showing you an envelope. And I like that. I think you kind of need both.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get some insights out of looking at things this way that you won't get at just one instant.
Right. There was this shot here that I'm going to bring up, and this was the one where, again, we were talking about this earlier about the orb or the UAP that everybody saw on the ground, but the cameras did not. And at the end, toward the end of the command center meeting, their data crunch that you had, you show this particular image here, Pete, and this was looking at this one little dot and supposing that maybe this was the UAP that everybody saw fly by. That's the impression we got from the way Prometheus put it together. We got the impression they were saying, hey, this could have been the UAP that LiDAR captured it. Is that a good statement or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it could be. It's in the right airspace. It's in the right neighborhood. But it could also be a bug.
I have a maybe stupid question. So could something be fast enough to avoid detection from like a game trail cam, but not fast enough to avoid LiDAR detection or SLAM scanner detection?
Interesting.
Because I think of, so weird tangent, but you've been on the show before, so not too weird, Pete, but when the Bigfoot show, when you caught something ghosting in the woods. And for me, that was exciting because it seems very frustrating that Bigfoot always seems to be able to avoid game trail cams. He moves so quickly, almost as if he even knows their ranges. But so not in this context, the orb, right? It was able to move in a way that cameras couldn't detect it, but it couldn't avoid the escape of the LiDAR.
Yeah, it's interesting. The other sort of tangential, but for something like that to show up, something that small, I mean, you have to, and depending on the range, how far away from the device it is, to be timed just right as the laser light is rotating and to hit that is kind of miraculous. Right?
So maybe it's a hello.
Hey.
And that's, of course, I know, I'm always going to be the one that's it's communicating. So, I have my own.
We need that part of the discussion.
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Thank you. Well, that's what I'm here to
not only do we need it, we have a license effectively to engage it because it's part of what I term the inherited narrative. If we were to neglect that possibility, I think that would be sort of malpractice on my part, at least.
Yeah, I agree.
So, while I'm not going to cherry pick the data, I'm going to do my very best not to bring a bias that's always looking for communication. I think that in the checklist of things to be asking ourselves is, hey, could there be volition behind this?
Yeah, and that's really interesting airspace where stuff keeps showing up in point clouds, regardless of device. To the northeast, from the in and out to, orbs earlier in the episode to, the orb I saw, which was episode 1, when I was in the helicopter. I mean, it's all kind of.
Yep. I remember that very well. Yep.
It's interesting. And so, yeah, just nothing like that is going to be whatever. Oh, it couldn't be. Not possible. No, it's a data point.
Yep. And just like these are data points. Yeah. And so when this was brought up on the screen, you had mentioned that you thought that this was very likely the rocket launch. And then this other piece here, this line going up, I
just said it. Same neighborhood to the northeast. Seen this over and over and over again.
Yep. Many times, yeah. And that's repeatable data. And you see all this other stuff that's back here in the background as well. It's not showing up maybe as well as it did when you saw the actual last season, when you saw the dome that was called a cone at that time. Then, but this line right here showing up very significantly. And then again, the overhead looking straight up. And this was the picture that I had commented about, that Travis was up here. He was talking about these rings, these different rings on here. And it looked like it was changing, like it was different snapshots of your terrestrial laser scanner. It was actually changing. So I didn't know if it looked like it was moving, like you were getting more of your scans were showing up while he was talking. I don't know if that was a trick of the camera or whatever, but was that displayed that way, that it was actually showing different segments of the data? So it looked like it was moving?
I'd have to say no, because this is, this data is a moment in time.
Right.
When the laser interacted with it.
Right. I didn't know if you had more than this one shot of that and you were letting them all run simultaneously, one after another. It just looked like it was moving. And I thought, oh my gosh, look at that. It looks like it's actually moving. It's turning.
Generally, when Pete's sharing data, that comes in the form of a single, we'll say scan, right? Okay. It's got a beginning, a middle, and end, right? Mm-hmm. We have overlaid data. I mean, we often do. I do that to kind of get correlation, to kind of build up those anomalous points. But I recognize this feature, this sort of ring structure, and I have wondered since the first time I saw it, where in the process is that being generated? Because when I look at the point cloud itself, of course, I'm seeing these arc segments, and I'm seeing what look like sectors and things, but never. And I think this is an important point to make. It's never, as depicted, a complete dome or a complete bubble. It's points here and there forming an arc. Telling us that there's, the instrument is interpreting things as coming from 2,000 feet away. So I'd like to know personally, like what part of the process generates these concentric rings, and I don't yet know the answer to that.
Yeah, neither do I. I mean, the elephant in the room, of course, is that the scanner is rotating and the laser's firing like this, which correlates with, that geometry we're looking at in 3D. So it remains interesting and remains a mystery to the vendor, Erik, to me.
Yeah, that's
And
And
keep
to us.
showing up.
And it keeps showing up. That's the thing. It keeps showing up. And the only place, as you mentioned before, that something like this is showing up is at Skinwalker Ranch.
Right. Yep.
And I'm sure you've taken well, I say sure, I'm not sure, but I'm assuming that you take the terrestrial laser scanner, you've set it up elsewhere around the ranch and did not get this.
Correct.
So, I mean, I think, and I've said this before. I think I said it when you guys were on the show with us previously, or, a couple months ago, was that I think that the team, all of you together, and that includes everybody, Caleb and Thomas and the whole team and all the people that you have from, Jim Royce and all them, you are getting closer and closer and closer to being able to detect what is not there visible to the naked eye. You're getting closer to being able to detect it. You've come up with different means by which to see some of the same things, like the blob. Now we've seen it in smoke. We've seen it in the heat, the thermal images, and then we've seen it with the rocket as the rocket was approaching it. I think you're getting so close to being able to detect it. If it were static, that might make it easier. But, the fact that you're getting closer, and when you do, then what? I mean, once we get to the point where, okay, now we can see when it's on. Oh, there it is. It's on right now. Great. Now what do we do with it? You study it further.
That's the question that is definitely the question of the evening. What now? Right. I've had a few of those experiences where I go from asking what if to being confronted with a data set that says what now, right? And I just have to keep telling myself, the map that we're assembling, the map of today's confusion is the map of tomorrow's understanding. We just have to keep collecting those data points.
Yep, absolutely. This is a quick shot of when they were looking back at 2023, and then of course last year when you were filming last year, what you captured there. Again,
nice.
That's that same thing. Again, repeatable.
Yeah. Behold the map of my confusion.
It reminds me of the tower, where the data wasn't, and it built that weird tower. I forget.
Yes. The photogrammetry anomaly.
Yeah.
There was one image. I should dig this out sometime. I'm sorry to tease you with this, but I'll describe it. There was one image that was shared with me from the closed circuit, the CCTV type cameras. They were from before my time. And it was, in fact, a vertical structure like this.
What? Sorry. Wow.
No way.
Yeah. I can describe. I mean, the only reason I'm talking about it, frankly, is because I've seen it in other places. In other words, I think it's gotten around a little bit, but there is an image of something looking off to the west. And so, look, lots of things could create vertical artifacts in data, right? But it sure does seem to be coming together to kind of reinforce this idea that there's some structure there. So I like talking about this as, some structured feature in the data, which may, for all we know, be dynamic.
Wow, Erik.
Yeah, not to preempt anything or anyone, but
yep. There's something I just took the temperature, the thermal image, and added it down there to kind of get my brain. I'm a visual person. I like to put things together to where this is how I kind of saw it. And it made me think of something, talking about the dome under the ground, and then you've got the dome, the bubble, over the surface. And it made me think about some sort of like and then something in the center poking straight up from the center. And I thought, boy, that's kind of reminiscent to me of a satellite, a dish, or some sort of a satellite antenna. And not so much the dome over top, but the dome underneath, and then the image of the blob standing up in the. So it made me think of the SETI antenna laying there. If the SETI antenna was laying on the ground down there, and it was creating some sort of a I don't know. this is me going off on a Seth tangent here.
Yeah. All right.
How this would go together. I'm like, could it be some sort of a weird antenna or something that's happening that's putting out signal occasionally, but and it's causing all kinds of interference when it does. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of how my mind works.
Yeah, and then the program that runs the antenna is this ancient form of AI, and we need to figure out whatever language it speaks.
Right.
Now you're using my material from 2016.
Yeah. I did want to show this too. We were talking about the insider program, and this was what we had for a screenshot here. Was talking about a free month using the Dragon code. I guess it's only a free week, I suppose. But yeah, we saw this image earlier, so we were talking about that. So whatever it is, you'll get some free time if you use the Dragon promo code Dragon. So that'll help out there. There was one experiment, and now that I've got your ear, I have a captive audience. I get you before he clicks off. Was that I always talking about the communication. Is the ranch communicating? And I had made this thing. You ever see those LED signs where the letters scroll by on
the marquee?
Yeah, the marquee, and you can tell it to. I always thought, take one of those, set it up in Homestead 2, hooked up to a word generator, and just let it sit there without showing any words, and let's see if the entity, if there is one, or anything else, would like to communicate. It could use the database of words and put them across that screen. Just let a camera sit on it 24/7 and watch to see if any words ever show up on that thing. Just one of those types of
that's a member of an entire family of experiments that have been discussed many times among the insiders, and I don't dismiss them.
Of course, yeah.
I've built some things that are quite like that are built out of arrays of 64 dots in stacks, and looking at truly random quantities and so forth. Who knows? Maybe we'll learn something from that type of activity.
Yeah, to set up the iLiving, that Kat brought that up, and I recall that so well, and that's something that Shannon and I have talked about that too. And again, we go back, was something trying to communicate? We don't know for sure. We cannot you can't nail down something was trying to communicate with us, but man, was that crazy.
Very suggestive. That's one of the most humbling things that's happened for me is, I come into possession of this piece of data and I don't know how to interpret it. Again, that story, I've told it so many times, I'm searching for a failure mode. I'm searching for, something that's wrong with the device.
Right.
And that is the lens through which I was viewing that for several minutes until I realized, wait a minute. Let me think about the context here. What was the sequence of events? What did I say? And what did I see? And so, I don't know that we're ever going to get resolution on that. But it is suggestive.
Absolutely. Well, we're almost at the 2-hour mark. I got to let you guys go. I've held you in captivity this long. Mike, did you have anything further, or Seth, that you wanted to ask or talk about?
Nope, I'm good.
No, I'm just super appreciative. Jeff asked me earlier, hey, we got a spot if you want to fill in. I said, yeah, cool, I'm in. And then he goes, oh, by the way, Pete's there. And maybe Erik too. I said, what? I don't have time to shave. But so thank you for letting me be part of it. It's it's fun to get to speculate with people who are on the ground interacting, and it's so cool too. Like Erik, I loved how you might have said it off air, but you said, well, I'm curious too what people are thinking of the show.
Yes.
I couldn't help myself if I was in your position. I want to know, and what am I missing? What am I, what do you think?
Yeah.
That is my selfish interest. I need, I think, the thoughts of others, because folks are seeing things that I don't see often.
Yeah, we saw a few things tonight in real time that we hadn't seen before. That's cool.
Yeah. And that's the thing, speculation. I mean, that's really what we are stuck with as viewers for the most part, and unless we are, have the privilege of having you guys come on. But we're stuck here with the idea that we have to see what is presented, knowing that you have more control than some other shows do, but knowing that Prometheus, or the production company, is going to put it together in their way. And And so we have to look at that and then try to determine or speculate as to what these things mean. Mike and I are very good at that. Seth, you've seen, we can all jump in here and speculate our butts off about what's happening. And we do.
And it's
because
fun.
But
Yeah.
as you have said, speculation is part of this, because without that,
Yeah.
you're never going to think of that other thing that it could possibly be, or an answer.
Jeff, I'm convinced that when we reach answers, it's not going to be exclusively through a deductive pathway. If you know what I mean by that, it's not always a deductive march or train of thought. Very often you take divergent thinking, you do a lot of inductive stuff as well. So there's more going on upstairs than we give ourselves credit for. There's an intuitive side to this, and it's okay for that to be part of the process.
Absolutely. It has to be. So, but again, I thank you very much for joining us here with us tonight. And as I've said before, there's always a seat at this table for both of you guys. Actually, any of the folks on the ranch, I've reached out to Thomas. Says, he said, "Yep, I'll come on again," and I'm sure he will. But any of the team, including Dragon, who has not been there this season, and we've already heard he's expressed why on social media, and we respect that very much. But he's welcome to come on. Any of the team is welcome to come on and talk with us. And I'd love to get Dave Mason. I got to talk to Dave Mason because I'd love to get some of his insights as to his equipment as well. But thank you guys very, very much. I appreciate you coming on with us. And folks, I really appreciate all of you hanging out with us for 2 hours and listening to it. If you, again, if you like the content of the show we did here for you tonight, please consider giving us a thumbs up on this and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And for those of you who donated or did a super chat, thank you very, very much. I appreciate every bit of it because it helps to keep this going. Couldn't do it without you, and I really appreciate it. Yeah, Dragon is doing live streams on the Insider page, and he'll be on Miriam's live. Yeah, that's right. Miriam's doing a live stream in a week or two when she gets this all set up, and Dragon will be there. And if you're familiar with who Miriam is, she's a great gal. Got to meet her at Phenomicon, and if anybody's going to Phenomicon this year, I'd love to meet you there. So, all right, thank you guys, Pete, Erik, Mike, Seth. Thank you, Linda. As always, thank you for all the moderation you've done. And with that, folks, we'll say goodnight. We'll catch you next time right here on the J Free 906 podcast. Good night.